We do not truly fall in love with a person. We fall in love with what they awaken within us, what they mirror back to us, often without even trying. They become a living symbol, an embodied message from the unconscious, calling something within us to rise from its long slumber. This is why the one you cannot be with often leaves the deepest mark. Their presence isn't just impactful because of chemistry or timing. It's because they seem to carry something your soul is starving for, something you didn't even know you needed until you met them. They may hold a confidence you've never allowed yourself to access, a freedom you secretly yearned for, a depth of emotion or tenderness that exposes the dryness in your own life. They become a mirror, not just of who you are, but of who you could be. When such a person enters your life, something ancient stirs. It is as if a locked room within your psyche is suddenly opened and light pours in. The forgotten parts of you, the artist, the lover, the mystic, the child, begin to stretch and breathe again. Their presence is not unlike a spring after a long winter. Everything within you that was dormant begins to bloom, even if it is painful. And this awakening rarely feels rational. It doesn't align neatly with your plans. It doesn't follow social expectations or timing. You might already be in a relationship. They might live oceans away. You might only know them for a weekend, a conversation, or even just a passing glance that inexplicably lingers. But the impact is undeniable because it's not about logic. It's about the psyche recognizing a key that fits its lock. A woman once told me of such an encounter. She was a high-powered executive, someone who lived by order and performance. Her days were filled with meetings, metrics, and the quiet suffocation of routine. She booked a retreat in Bali almost on impulse, hoping only to find rest. But what she found was something far more destabilizing and sacred. On the second day, she met a man. He was not flashy or forceful. He was quiet, attentive, present in a way that disarmed her defenses. They spoke over shared fruit in the morning and walked through gardens in the evening. They embarked on this walk with a purpose, and the sun was setting. She was in the mood for some walking. There was a sudden call from overhead. She turned and looked in to see a figure in the distance. Presently, she met this figure in the morning and walked through gardens in the evening. There was no romance in the traditional sense, no touch, no flirtation, and yet she described it as the most intimate experience of her life. What moved her wasn't what he did, it was what she felt in his presence. She laughed without checking herself. She cried without shame. She spoke truths she had never spoken out loud. In him, she saw the life she had abandoned in her quest to be successful. He reminded her she was not a machine, that she was, above all else, human, breathing, feeling, longing. When they parted, she cried, not because she was losing him, but because she had found herself. He had become a mirror, reflecting the life she had lost touch with. She didn't need to stay with him. She needed to integrate what he awakened. This is the paradox of the people we cannot be with. They are not here to stay, they are here to reveal. Their presence is not meant to fulfill us externally, but to activate something internally, to draw out the parts of ourselves we have abandoned, suppressed, or forgotten. And yet, this kind of encounter can be excruciating. The hunger it awakens is often mistaken for love, but it's something deeper. It's recognition, it's soul memory, it's the psyche whispering, this. This is what you've been missing. But the tragedy is that we often misinterpret this as a cosmic injustice. We say, why would life bring me someone like this if I'm not meant to have them? But the truth is more nuanced, more profound. Sometimes life doesn't send you what you're meant to keep. It sends you what you're meant to see. These figures are like dream symbols walking in flesh. They aren't here to complete you, but to confront you, to show you the gap between who you are and who you are meant to become. And that revelation alone is sacred. What often hurts the most is the absence of closure. We do not get to finish the story. There is no shared apartment, no anniversary, no merging of paths. There is only the echo of what was awakened and the responsibility to carry it forward. And yet, in this ache lies the deepest opportunity for growth, because now you know what your soul craves. You have felt it, tasted it, and this awareness cannot be undone. You can try to forget. You can try to go back to sleep, but the psyche remembers, and it will not rest until you answer the call to become the person this encounter pointed you toward. This is why the language of fate, destiny, and soul contracts exists, because rational explanations fail to capture the gravity of these moments. You didn't just meet a person, you met an initiation, a threshold between who you were and who you must now become. And perhaps this is the most powerful love of all, not the love that stays, but the love that awakens, the one that burns not to warm you, but to cleanse you, the one that asks nothing of you except your transformation. You may never see them again, or you may think of them every day. Either way, the work is the same. To thank them not for staying, but for unlocking you, to carry forward the part of you that came alive in their presence. To make a life not with them, but from the truth they stirred, because in the end, they were never the destination. They were the door. And now it is you who must choose whether to walk through. Longing is one of the most misunderstood experiences of the human soul. In the modern world, it is often dismissed as weakness, labeled as obsession, or pathologized as a problem that needs to be fixed. We are taught to chase what can be attained and to discard what cannot. But longing, true, soul-deep longing, is not a flaw in your design. It is a compass, a sacred flame, a message from the unseen layers of your being. When you desire someone you cannot have, the ache that rises is not merely about them. To meet someone that is also to meet the one you cannot have, the ache that rises is not merely about them. The pain is not just because of their absence. It is because something in you has been touched, awakened, stirred from its hiding place. The very fact that you can feel such depth is proof that you are still alive beneath the layers of protection, routine, and indifference that daily life often demands. In an age that glorifies certainty and closure, longing teaches you how to remain open. It stretches your capacity to sit with what is incomplete, unresolved, and mysterious. And in this space, you meet your own soul. Longing is the birthplace of art, of prayer, of transformation. It is the energy that drives lovers to write letters they'll never send, artists to paint what words cannot capture, and mystics to sit in silence under the night sky waiting for a sign. Most people cannot bear this ache. They numb it with distraction. They flee into temporary pleasure or busy themselves with noise. They try to replace the person, suppress the memory, or shame themselves for still feeling. But longing does not disappear when ignored. It only descends deeper into the body, showing up as fatigue, restlessness, or the quiet hum of dissatisfaction that never goes away. You see, longing is not the enemy, it is the guide. Its presence signals that something within you is reaching not necessarily for that specific person, but for the experience they represent. Maybe it is intimacy that you've been starved of. Maybe it is emotional safety. Maybe it is the beauty of being seen without masks or performance. The person may have stirred this hunger, but they are not the source of it. The longing predates them. They only brought it into view. To sit with longing without trying to extinguish it is to enter sacred ground. It is to stop asking, how do I get rid of this pain, and begin asking, what is this pain asking of me? This shift is not comfortable. It requires you to feel fully, to stay awake in the space between desire and fulfillment. It is like holding a note in music, just a breath longer than is easy. But that note, that pause, that ache, it carries truth. There is a story of a man who once fell in love with a woman during a train ride. They spoke for only 2 hours. She was married, and he lived in another country. When they parted, there were no promises, no exchanges, and yet for years he thought of her. Not because he believed they were meant to be, but because something about her awakened a part of him he had buried. Her laughter, her presence, the way she asked questions that made his guard fall. He realized later that what he longed for was not her alone, but the version of himself he became in her presence. That man, more open, more curious, more alive, had been waiting to return. This is the hidden purpose of longing. It returns us to ourselves. It reveals what is still missing, not in the outer world, but in the inner one. It whispers of the life unlived, the words unsaid, the songs unsung. If you follow it, not impulsively, not recklessly, but attentively, it will guide you to the forgotten places of your soul. It will create the successes of your soul. Longing matures us. In its raw form, it may sound like, I need you to complete me. But as we deepen into it, it becomes, you have reminded me of what I have lost touch with. And eventually it whispers, now it is time to become that which you seek. Because the truth is, the one you long for may never return. They may never be yours in the way your heart imagines. But the version of yourself that emerged in their light, that version is real and it can still be claimed. The tenderness you felt, the depth you touched, the aliveness that surged through your veins, these are not dependent on another person's presence. They are yours. They came from you. They were only activated by another, like a match to a candle. Longing is a lantern. Its glow may hurt your eyes at first, especially if you've been living in the dark. But if you dare to walk by its light, it will take you where your soul is ready to grow. It will lead you to the grief you've never fully grieved, the dreams you abandoned to please others, the fire you dimmed to fit in. It will lead you to a fuller, more integrated life, not one free from pain, but one rich with meaning. There is wisdom in letting longing break you open, because in that breaking, something essential is revealed. You learn that love is not possession, that feeling deeply is not foolishness, that to ache is not to be weak, but to be human, profoundly and courageously human. The poet once said, be patient toward all that is unsolved in your heart. Patience does not mean passivity. It means being present without trying to rush the process. It means listening, watching, feeling, and trusting that what hurts today may one day become the soul for your deepest growth. Longing is sacred. It is a thread that connects you to your soul's deeper yearnings. I think about our two future sisters, and just for verbiage, someone, not all longing will be satisfied in this lifetime, but all longing, if followed with care, will lead you somewhere true. Even if that truth is not the one you hoped for, it will be the one you needed. So the next time you feel that ache, the one that stirs when you think of them, do not silence it. Do not shame it. Sit with it, honor it, and then ask, what is this longing asking me to become? Because that question may be the beginning of everything. We are conditioned, almost from childhood, to believe that love must look a certain way, that it must fit into a story, that love means having, keeping, securing, that if it is true, it will last, that if it does not, then it must have been a mistake or an illusion. This narrative is deeply embedded in our culture, our myths, and even in our nervous systems. It offers comfort, certainty, control, and yet it often fails us, especially when we encounter a love that is deeply real, yet impossible to hold on to. There is a kind of love that does not come to fulfill your fantasies, but to destroy them. It does not arrive to stay forever, but to shift you forever. This kind of love is not bound by time, title, or outcome. It enters your life like a storm, intense, undeniable, sacred. And then it leaves, sometimes without warning, often without explanation. And you are left not with a partner, but with a fire that now burns in your chest, a truth that cannot be forgotten. The person you cannot be with may feel like the one you were born to find. The connection may feel cosmic, predestined, raw in a way that defies logic. Every cell in your body may ache to hold on, to find a way, to fight for a future. But something larger says no, not because you are unworthy, not because the love was false, but because the purpose of this love was not permanence, it was transformation. This realization can be excruciating. To feel so much, to see so much of yourself reflected in another, and still to be asked to let go. It feels cruel. It feels unjust. But there is a deeper truth hidden within the pain. Some loves come to awaken the soul, not to comfort the ego. And the soul does not measure love by duration or by whether you built a life together. The soul asks only, did this love open you? Did it humble you? Did it change you? The love that cannot stay often carries the greatest light. And that light is blinding because it shows you not only what love can be, but also what you are not yet ready to hold. It reflects back all your hunger, your longing, your projections. It teaches you about your own capacity to attach, to idealize, to fear. And in this way, it becomes not just a love story, but a mirror, an encounter with your unfinished self. So many suffer because they cling to the idea that if love is real, it must result in union. But love is not a transaction. It is not a contract. It is not even a promise. It is a force, a sacred current that moves through us when we are cracked open. Sometimes it moves through two people simultaneously in their lives align. Sometimes it moves through two people just long enough to shift them, to burn away a layer of their false self, and then it disappears. You may feel foolish for loving someone you cannot have. You may ask yourself why you still think of them, why their name lives under your breath like a forgotten prayer. But what you feel is not failure, it is memory, a soul memory of who you were when you were near them, of who you touched in them, of the glimpse you caught of something eternal, something sacred. That memory is not meant to chain you. It is meant to bless you, to remind you of what love is like when it is unfiltered, unguarded, unpossessed. When we are children, we believe that to love someone means they must belong to us. But as we grow, truly grow, we begin to see that the most powerful love is not about possession at all. It is about recognition. It is about the willingness to honor what is alive between two people without needing to cage it or control it. Real love, spiritual love, transcends the boundaries of form. It exists even when the other person is gone, even when you never speak again, even when the world would call it unfinished. Even when the world would call it unfinished. To love and let go is to rise above the ego's need for dominant certainty and outcome. The ego says, if I cannot have you, I've failed. But the soul whispers, because I loved you, I was changed. This is the point where love becomes initiation. It is no longer about what you can get from the other person. It is about who you must become because of them. You may never hear from them again. You may never know what they felt. You may never find closure in the way your mind desires. But the deeper closure is internal. It comes when you can bless what was without bitterness, when you can remember them without reaching for them, when you can say thank you for helping me find myself through you. That is the death of the ego, and it hurts. It burns. But in the ashes, something new is born, a softer heart, a clearer mind, a deeper trust in the intelligence of life. You begin to understand that not everything must end in a relationship. Some people come into your life to prepare you for your next version, to break your heart just enough so that light can enter. There is no shame in loving someone you cannot be with. There is no shame in the depth of your feeling, in the tenderness of your ache. What matters is what you do with it. Will you let it harden you or soften you? Will you let it define your worth or reveal your depth? The ones who cannot stay are not punishments, they are passages. They arrive to awaken, to teach, to open doors within you that you didn't know existed. Their leaving is not a void, it is an invitation to fill your own life with the love you tasted in their presence. So when you think of them, when their name moves like a quiet wind through your chest, do not resist. Just whisper back, I love you, and I'll let you go. And feel what happens in that space. Feel the part of you that dies and the part that is finally fully born. There is a strange, often painful intelligence to who we fall for, especially the ones we cannot have. At first it feels personal, random, unfair, but when you step back and examine the pattern of your longing, a deeper truth begins to emerge. These attachments are not accidents. They are reflections, mirrors of something unresolved within you. The one you cannot be with often serves as a messenger of the unconscious, summoning your attention to an old story, still playing silently beneath your life. If you find yourself consistently drawn to those who are unavailable, emotionally distant, already committed, or just out of reach, the question is not why them, but why now? Why again? Behind every impossible love is a hidden map, and it doesn't lead to them. It leads to you. Sometimes what you chase in another is not the person themselves, but the emotion they stir, the ache they evoke. The familiar shape of rejection, abandonment, or inadequacy. You are not just attracted to them, you are drawn to the wound they mirror. The unavailable lover may echo the distant parent. The hot and cold partner may mirror the chaos of early love. The one who sees you deeply but cannot stay may reflect the way you learn to associate intimacy with loss. These patterns do not come from logic. They are older than thought. They live in the shadow realm of memory, formed during moments when your nervous system was still learning what love felt like. If love first arrived through absence, you may grow to crave absence. If love meant striving, proving, earning, you may feel most alive in relationships where you must fight to be seen. This is not madness. It is adaptation, a learned survival of the heart. But the ache you carry is not a curse. It is a signal, a message rising from the depths. The repetition of pain is not cruelty, it is clarity. Life keeps bringing you back to the same emotional terrain because something within you longs to be witnessed, integrated, healed. The person you cannot be with may have simply activated the most honest version of your longing, and in doing so, they've made the invisible pattern visible. There is a moment, often after the heartbreak, when clarity begins to arrive, not all at once, but in quiet waves. You begin to see how your past shapes your preferences. You begin to notice how your craving for intensity often masks a fear of vulnerability, how chasing what is out of reach distracts you from what is already here, how, deep down, a part of you believes that love must hurt in order to be real, and in that recognition something begins to soften. Not the pain, but your relationship to it. It is tempting to call these painful connections fate, to believe that you were meant to suffer in order to learn. But that is not quite true. The universe does not conspire to break you. It conspires to awaken you. And the method of awakening is often reflection, placing before you the exact person, the exact situation, the exact ache that reveals what you have not yet resolved. The person who cannot love you back is not a punishment. They are a revelation. Through them, you come to see the part of you that still equates love with striving. Love you seek outside is really a yearning to come home inside. That the need to be chosen by another hides the deeper invitation to choose yourself. That your deepest hunger is not for them, but for what their presence temporarily awakened in you. A feeling of being alive, worthy, wanted. To break the pattern, you do not need to reject the feeling. You need to stay with it, to trace it back to its roots, to ask, where did I first feel this hunger? Whose love did I try to earn? Whose eyes did I long to be seen through? And then, what have I made this mean about me? The work is not in forgetting them. It is in remembering you, remembering who you were before you learned to chase ghosts, before you believed that love must be one, before you internalized that you were too much, or not enough, or somehow unlovable in your natural state. Pattern loses power not when it disappears, but when it is seen. When you bring it into awareness, you are no longer its prisoner, you become its witness. And in that witnessing, the alchemy begins. You no longer fall blindly, you no longer repeat unconsciously, you begin to choose consciously, courageously, differently. You start to recognize the subtle cues, the familiar ache that feels like love but is really a cry from the past, the urge to chase, to prove, to perform, the way you shrink when someone pulls away or inflate when someone leans in. These are not flaws, they are signals. They are the psyche's way of pointing you toward the unfinished stories still asking to be completed. And slowly you begin to write a new story, one in which love is not scarcity, but presence, not striving, but acceptance, not control, but connection, one in which you do not abandon yourself to be chosen, but remain with yourself and let love arise from that rooted place. So the person you cannot be with, what were they really showing you? What did their presence awaken? What part of you felt familiar in their absence, their silence, their rejection? And most importantly, what will you do with that information now? This is not about forgetting them. It's about decoding them, about understanding that every impossible love is a message wrapped in skin, that every heartbreak is a mirror reflecting the parts of you still asking for attention, that every repetition is not fate, but an invitation to make a new choice. You are not cursed. You are being called. Called not to suffer, but to see, not to repeat, but to rise. And in that seeing, you begin the real work, not of chasing someone else, but of returning to yourself.